Welcome back to BT Vancouver. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. Well, today is Orange Shirt Day. It serves as a reminder of the brutal residential school system this country once had and the impact it had on Indigenous children and families. And joining us now to talk more about this is Vancouver-Granville MP, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Thanks for taking the time, Jody.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So first off, what does Orange Shirt Day mean for you?
Well, I mean, like many right across the country, it is recognition and honoring and remembrance of residential school survivors and those that didn't come home. I mean, broadly, it means for me resilience of Indigenous peoples, and I think about my grandmother and my family and community as we continue to move forward and address the major issues surrounding Indigenous peoples in this country.
All right. Wanted to talk to you about last week's throne speech. It reiterated a lot of familiar issues impacting Indigenous people in this country today. Ottawa had a number of promises, too many to name in this short interview. A lot of these promises we heard in the 2019 throne speech, but the pandemic, of course, has been blamed for the delays. So what do you think needs to be at the top of the legislative agenda right now?
Well, first of all, I think we have to stop making excuses, stop delays. There were many promises in the throne speech, many recycled promises, even dating back to 2015. We need to legislate UNDRIP and put in place rights recognition and address the fundamental inequalities that exist in our country. Those are our priorities not only for Indigenous peoples, Black Canadians, and other marginalized people, as the pandemic has highlighted those realities in a really stark way.
All right. And they wanted to introduce legislation. This was another promise in the throne speech to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples before the end of this year, 2020. Do you think that's realistic?
I think it's entirely possible. It's not like the work hasn't been done. There was a private member's bill, Romeo Saganash, in the last parliament. It's unfortunate that it wasn't passed in the last parliament, but yeah, it's entirely possible, and I look forward to having a nonpartisan approach to ensure that this legislation moves forward quickly.
Is there one issue that really sticks out to you, though, such as urgent need for primary care on First Nations reserves, or more attention to the missing and murdered Indigenous women?
For sure. We were waiting for an action plan. We've been waiting for some time from the federal government around the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls calls to action. I always look at things in terms of two tracks. We need to close the gap in terms of the inequalities that exist around health, education, standard of living in Indigenous communities across the country, but also at the same time recognize the rights that Indigenous peoples have, put in place mechanisms for them to be self-determining, for our communities to make decisions for ourselves and rebuild within a stronger Canada. That's the opportunity that we have, and we need to ensure on Orange Shirt Day and any other day that every child matters and every individual in this country matters.
Still so much work to be done. Okay, Jody, just one more question for you. When lockdown started to ease in Canada, we were rocked by anti-racism demonstrations across the country against police brutality. It was sparked by the killing of George Floyd, and then violence against Indigenous people. I believe we had you on the program talking about this a few months ago, was front and center. So since then, have you noticed any progress on Black and Indigenous rights?
Well, I've noticed a lot. There's more awareness. People are becoming more educated and aware of the reality that many marginalized peoples in this country face. We're not the United States, but we do have systemic racism in this country. We have racist laws still on the books. And yesterday, I was horrified, as an example, to hear and see what happened to that Indigenous woman in a hospital in Montreal. These things can't continue to happen, and the more that we have conversations about these issues and, more importantly, put in place action to dismantle the systemic barriers that exist in our institutions, the better off our country will be.
All right, Jody, I wish I could talk to you for another 20 minutes, but thank you for taking the time this morning. Always great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
All right, that is Jody Wilson-Raybould, Vancouver-Granville MP, discussing Orange Shirt Day, which is today.